The world stopped. And what else was I going to do with my brain besides think why the world stopped, how it made me feel, what I could do about it, what I couldn't do about it? Who am I if all of these things are not there anymore? Gosh, so uncomfortable, so literal, painful. I didn't know anything. That was scarier than thinking I knew it.
If we think about it in a binary of two camps of people who are just comfortable and they stay in that comfort forever, and then folks like us who are always pushing out of it, even though we want to be comfortable, we want to stay naive, but it's like we can't. There's some compulsion that won't let us. The first time I went to therapy was in high school. So I had gone on this Catholic retreat, went to confession, and the priest was like, "Hey, I think you should go to therapy." And I was like, okay.
Mine was so out of control in the beginning because you don't know how to manage emotions. The panic attack, like medical thing that like triggered something, triggered that, and then that triggered everything else. And it just, the world fell on top of me. And I remember going to class and just like my body, I was not in control. Not that we're ever really in control of our bodies, but like I felt.
Just really appreciate you being here with me today on Becoming You, Devon McCarroll.
Oh my goodness. Happy to be here. I love watching your episodes because they're so real. And I love how this is sarcasm, but I love how rare that is these days. Everything's so curated and edited, and it just finding little bits of genuine authenticity is so refreshing. And it just stops me in my tracks. Whatever media I'm looking at, whatever email I'm reading, if they're acting like a human being and not that they're hiding some sales pitch, oh man, I eat that up.
Yeah, that is such a good point. And it's so startling too, because I think we interact with, quote, real people in our daily lives all the time, and they're probably pretty afraid of, let's say, jumping in front of a camera because they feel they have to achieve some unrealistic standard, you know, of perfection and highly edited and having all the software and having all the resources of editors and hairstylists and all the things in between. And that's something that I'm just like, okay, I literally, you texted me that you were drying your hair. I was like, probably should have done that. I washed my hair last night and slept on it. So I have like crazy cowlicks and I'm just like, whatever, like we're here for it. You know, like it's all good.
It's not the 50s anymore. And we don't have to subscribe to visual aesthetics that, you know, will have the consequences aren't there anymore. For the most part, if like you don't leave the house without makeup, you're not, you know, stoned.
Shunned, yeah. I was going to say shunned. You're like stoned. Yeah, but
shunned is better. Shunned, same thing.
Yeah,
Shunned
it feels like the same thing. A shunning is an emotional stoning in a lot of ways, you know, like where you feel ostracized by society and like, how can I see the light of day? I'm not respecting people, like all of these different expectations we have as women that are pushed on us. It's really hard to navigate what to listen to. So sometimes you just go out, hair up, sweatpants on, no makeup, and you do your thing and you come back home and who cares what anyone says in the meantime. It's probably their problem anyway.
Genuinely. A random side tangent. Oh man, what's her name? Emma something on YouTube. She's humongous. Emma Chamberlain. I watched her when she was like in the very beginning of her YouTube journey, and now she's interviewing people at like the VMAs or other award shows that I don't know the name of. And she was one of the first people on the internet to show up on videos with no makeup, straight up acne on her face.
Wow.
And like disheveled, depressed, in bed, admitting she had been in bed all day. And that was like 2016 or something, maybe earlier. I can't remember, but that was so shocking to me. I was like, how is she doing this in front of people, knowing she's going to send this out to her audience, which ended up being, you know, millions of people eventually. And now it's not surprising because people eat up authenticity because that's all we want to see is ourselves reflected in media. Even though this curated, you know, aesthetic is what sells, what makes people feel is, oh my gosh, they're just like me. So ever since then, my self-esteem has been less and less dependent on, am I wearing enough makeup? Is my skin clear enough? It's still there. I mean, it's still going to be in the back of your head if you're having a bad skin day or a bad hair day. but
Oh
it becomes,
yeah.
it's like kind of, I'm actually coming up on 2 years sober in March,
Wow,
the
congrats. That's
14th.
awesome. Oh my gosh,
Thank you.
very cool. You're
And
welcome.
it's it's crazy, but it's the similar feeling of the less you indulge in something that you know isn't healthy for you, the less you crave it. And just over time, you hear a little bit less in your brain about, oh, you should do this, you should do this. In my mind, they're similar things of, oh, you can go outside and not wear makeup and not look supermodel-esque and still, like, who cares? It's you who cares about what other people think of you, but other people are doing the same thing. And are you looking at them any differently? Sometimes, but that's like a projection of yourself, wondering that if people are doing that to you, and then you get to do that, you get to touch on that in therapy,
Right, exactly.
and deconstruct that and why that hurts you in the way that it does and where did that come from. But man, just the freeing nature of, I'm a human being, I'm going to look like a human being, I'm choosing to look like a real human being today, and just embodying it. Oh, took years. Still takes time.
Yeah. I totally relate to so much of what you're saying, and I don't want to make your episode all about me, but I'm just so glad that you're here because it just feels like the right timing in a lot of ways. So thank you so much just for speaking your truth already and sharing these tidbits that are so relatable and so real. It's something that, like you said, I mean, people do gravitate towards that authenticity, that vulnerability. They see themselves in situations that you've described. And it makes all of us a little more human and a little more connected, even though we're far apart. And sometimes it feels like a pretty lonely life to live, not even just place to exist in. So thank you for the example that you're setting. I know I outlined a bunch of different things for us to chat through. Is there anything top of mind that you want to start with, or how do you want to flow, sharing your story of becoming and, our time together today?
I think I like how our conversations I'm able to be present in them, and then also things pop up that I know will continue into more interesting conversations. So the thing you just said about not wanting to make this about yourself, first of all, it's your podcast. You can do whatever you want. But second of all, as a fellow neurodivergent, we have this, we share this inner voice of, don't share too much because you're taking away the spotlight of the person sharing their their personal thing. And that takes away from them. And that's selfish. And we should keep that on wrap. But we also want to make sure they feel validated and heard. That's like not a thing with certain groups of people. People with ADHD, they share what relates to them because that's how they know how to relate to others. They don't do it on, and we interrupt a lot as well, neurodivergent people, because we just want to make the other person feel connected. So, and we also have a horrible memory, so we have to get that thought out as soon as possible. But we bring up it's gonna go bye-bye in a second, but we bring up our experiences to match or to relate to the other person out of just pure, I don't know, community, or just wanting to make a moment there. So I have taken years to go from, oh my gosh, this person's trying to one up me by bringing up their experience, to where I reframe it, whether they're doing it on purpose or not, I reframe it as they are trying to connect to me in the best way they know how, which is their life experience, which is the only life experience they have. So they're saying, oh, wow, that I relate to that because of this. Now, if they take over the whole conversation and only talk about them the entire rest of the time, maybe it's something different. But if they're tagging in, like you saying, that's so relatable to me, and you give a little quip, I mean, how much closer could you get in that moment without having done that? So I'm all for the back and forth of, oh my gosh, that's so relatable, this is why. And you see it in the best of interviews, like Hot Ones or Last Meal on Mythical Kitchen. Like the interviewer will add in their own experience, and then the other person will back and forth, and it just makes it so much more real, because it's not, I have to cut myself off here now because it's not fair to them.
Right.
So whatever you want to add, basically, I'm here for it, because that's the point of this.
Yeah, no, thank you, Devon. And even as you're describing that, it gives so much space to folks who do experience what you're talking about. And even in my mind, it is a more prescriptive way of communicating. It's not necessarily natural to me to step aside and let someone else talk. I am from the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, like we hamburger when we talk. It's always a layered conversation. There's no monologuing to be found. And, everyone gets a chance to speak, but you do have to like be assertive and cut in. And like you said, it's a way to connect with people. But of course, on the flip side, out of respect and, all of that, I just try to be mindful too, depending on the situation. So there's a bit of both of that in me. I'm not diagnosed, but who knows? But I do know, like you're saying, for some people, it's harder to even be aware of sometimes and to manage it. And they're just doing it from the best place they know. And I welcome all of that. Like, I want to hear the things that pop into people's heads because my brain is always chattering away. So I totally relate to just the incessant, like, spaghetti brain, we used to call it, for girls versus waffle brains for boys, which who knows how that's like, how relevant that is now.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, really? Yeah. Growing up, they described the compartmentalization that males can do, where they just have, like waffle cubbies or like drawers or something like that, where they just put everything in those one place. And when they take it out, that's what they're thinking about. And when they put it away, it stops, it ceases to be thought. So for instance, they have something called a nothing box and they can literally think about nothing. Whereas if you have a spaghetti brain, everything is connected to everything. The synapses are always firing. One thing will make you think of something else and it all ties back. And you'll hear in conversation, how did we get here? Well, it's because we're working with a spaghetti brain rather than a waffle brain. So just an easy way to think about it.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And, we could, in a future episode, we absolutely could tear those analogies apart and say, do we really have spaghetti brains, or like, how were we socialized to think about compartmentalizing? Are they actually compartmentalizing, or are they stuffing it down so they don't feel anything? Yes. And thinking nothing that's a crazy concept to me. I can stare at a wall and have entire conversations with myself.
Oh yeah.
But also, like, good for them. They get to actually have stillness in their brain. Wow. Don't know what that is, but yeah, that's crazy. I want to indulge all the neurodivergent tendencies, because those are the most interesting conversations I have, is just when people feel free to do communication however they feel like doing it at that moment in time. The best.
Yeah. I met this woman recently. She was your typical housewife in Southern California, 25 years probably. I mean, she didn't even look past her 40s. So the amount of life experience this woman had, it's astounding. However, she mentioned that towards the end of her marriage, her husband, as she started experiencing new things outside the home and learning new things and finding new ways to interact with the world around her, and she started to express this to him and share her new experiences with him, and went and stepped outside of that mold, right, of the stay-at-home mom. She started exploring other ways to live life, and his response was to call her crazy. And she said, which a lot of us may associate with gaslighting, but that's my projection. That's not something she said. So anyway, he's calling her crazy, and she says to him, I'd rather be crazy because I've never felt more alive, And I was just like, wow. Yeah, because she's now experiencing all these things and connecting with the world around her and the people around her. And if that makes her crazy, so be it. But at least she feels alive and she feels closer to her true self and whatever purpose she has on this planet. And I thought that was amazing. And what you were saying made me think of it, which is maybe a spaghetti brain, maybe not. But like you said, we can dissect that another time.
There's so many things there, but I love that she had the bravery to first even consider leaving the mold, because we all have something, hopefully we all have an example in our life where we were terrified to leave this mold due to some preconceived notion or how we were taught or raised or the consequences of it. And then we did go against the mold, and we felt that, what do you call it? The cognitive dissonance of, I was always told not to do this for this reason. but then I did it and maybe it didn't happen the way I was told it was going to happen. And I actually feel better about it. And now I feel more autonomous because I did it for me by myself. And I think that's the scariest part, is doing the brave first step. And then she stuck with it, even after what could have been the most intimate person in her life, closest friend perhaps, or just person she's known a long time, said, "You're crazy," which, not a therapist, but projection is heck, right? Like, his version of crazy is her giving up what she had. That doesn't mean she's objectively crazy in any means. If anything, he's scared of change and he wants to label the scary thing so that they can back away from the thing and go back to the way they were, because no one wants to be labeled like crazy. There was maybe subconscious intention there, but gosh, yeah, what a hard lifestyle to step out of too. I mean, I know you and I have talked about that lifestyle being something that may not be top of mind for us. But I like that you've also kept the door open. I've been pretty sure about my life not ending up in typical housewife fashion,
right?
For like a really long time.
Yeah.
And then you double think yourself, do I actually really not want this, or do I not want this because it's been so long that I don't want to seem like I flip-flopped?
Yeah.
Or do I not want this because it's what people expect of me and I want to be rebellious and I want to, feel like I'm in control of something? Or do I actually not want this? What camp I'm in now is genuinely don't want this. If someone else does and it makes them happier than they've ever been, love it. To each their own, right? And intersectional feminism, all that good stuff. But we all know stories of people who have been in that specific role and have never stepped outside or done, the scary thing of trying something new. So I applaud the heck out of her, because that's terrifying.
It really can be. So many of us are so afraid of change. And as you're describing, if your support system is throwing it in your face and they're anti-supporting you, it can feel even more debilitating, that the thing that you want to explore and the goodness you're taking back into your life is being rejected. And to strike out on your own and actually pursue what you feel called to do can feel even scarier in that moment than it ordinarily would, because it means you have to make this choice to do it on your own. You don't know where that will lead you or who's going to be with you along the way, if anyone. And that's our fear a lot of times, is that no one will join us. And of course, like, it's not true, but you have to go through all of those crunchy times and that aloneness and that desert, if you will, to get to the other side where the water and the nourishment and the people are. And you find your people, you find your tribe, whatever you want to call them. But when you're your most authentic, true self, then people recognize that and they gravitate towards it if you're their person. And that's also how you can attract your people in response. When you think about changes, Devon, like, what are some things that help you through that? Like, I know you tend to err on the side of getting out of your comfort zone, but not everyone does that. So where does that willpower or courage come from?
Oh man. And yeah, I don't know why. I think it starts from a root of rebellion, because I was raised in a very prescribed world. There was one way to do the one thing you were supposed to do. There was no kind of extra thought, because extra thoughts brought in questions and the questions didn't have great answers. I'm talking, religiously, but there was also like a social aspect to it. There was a class and race and everything. So you would think I would have stuck in the mindset of change is scary for longer than I did, which was a really long time. I genuinely did not think too far outside of the box that I was raised in until the pandemic.
Wow. So what was
that's
that like?
because, yeah, I know. How old was I? Oh gosh, it's 2025. I'm 28. So 23-ish. So yeah, a little bit of a late bloomer, but that's okay, because everyone in all walks of life, like Miss Homemaker that decided to think outside of her box. I mean, gosh, 4 decades. But yeah, it gave me the world stopped. And what else was I going to do with my brain besides think about why the world stopped, how it made me feel, what I could do about it, what I couldn't do about it, and who am I if all of these things are not there anymore? And I'm sure plenty of people have the same experience of everything was different, therefore I had to reframe how I think about myself. And maybe some other people kind of like dissociated and just like didn't do that stuff because, gosh, so uncomfortable, so literal, painful, to think that maybe the way you were brought up isn't actually what you think. It's just what you are too scared to go against due to how different it is. So yeah, that was a 2-year process from the beginning of the pandemic to like 2022, where I there were just waves of it. But the religion thing and just how I thought about myself, my goals in partnerships, career goals, I didn't know anything. And that was scarier than thinking I knew it. I think that was the number one motivator was, if I'm wrong, at least I know this thing about myself because I worked towards it and I found it for me. It wasn't what I had been told my whole life. It wasn't what a new way of thinking that I found that I adapted to, like in one go. It was over time. It was so painful. And I had to rethink every single thing I had ever been taught. And I that's a really good question because I've never thought about why in my brain it makes more sense to try the scary thing to figure out why I think the thing that I do versus sticking with it, which is so comfortable. I love being in comfort zones. I have like chronic anxiety and depression. I love the idea of like staying in bed all day. It's so comforting to be in control of certain things, but my brain will feel so bad about it if I do such a thing. And that is something I'm going to bring up to my therapist at some point. I got to think about that. That's such a good question.
Yeah.
I think it's not to think what's that? There's a saying about something living an unobserved life. That's scarier to me than observing it and not doing anything about it.
Right. And
that's the root of it for sure.
Right. Like feeling like you're just wasting your time, maybe. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's a good way of putting it. I think, you have one life and it's comfortable to sit with what you know, but what don't you know? What don't you know you don't know?
Oh, yeah.
That would drive me nuts. It drives me nuts to not think about these things. And that's not what makes a calm person. That is what makes an anxious person. And boy, am I. Thank you, medication. But
right.
I'd rather not just sit with what I'm told. I have to extract exactly what I think and why, even if I may not ever get to an answer. Because how many questions? Are there
every question begets 5 more questions. Yeah,
absolutely. But at least you're thinking.
Right, exactly. And maybe it's 2 different camps, so to speak. And I know I tend to live in a binary. I grew up in a religious community as well. So black and white thinking is my go-to, and trying to see the gray is something I have to make the concerted effort to do. But, for the purpose of my understanding of what you just shared, Devon, if we think about it in a binary of 2 camps of people who are just comfortable and they stay in that comfort forever, and then folks like us who are always pushing out of it, even though we want to be comfortable, we want to stay naive, but it's like we can't. There's some compulsion that won't let us. Maybe it's as simple as that. Like, I don't know if we would actually have the answers as to why our brains do these things, but there's definitely a group of folks that are okay with the norm and the entertainment world and all the distractions. And then there's the rest of us who are trying to figure out, what are we not paying attention to? What are these distractions keeping us from seeing and exploring, either in ourselves or in the world around us? But the way that you worked through that answer was amazing. And I just really appreciate the process you took us through. And I love that somehow that made it to the docket on your therapy list now. But it's always great to kind of get their opinion too. You know, hey, I was just having this chat and this came up about myself. What does it mean? Sometimes they have a profound answer. Sometimes they're saying it's not that serious. But either way, it helps us get to know ourselves a little bit better, which I always appreciate.
Oh my gosh. Therapy is such an underrated resource. And sometimes it's underrated for good reason, only because with every career, you're going to have people that maybe aren't meant for that career, but they're still doing it. Or maybe they have their own biases that they haven't looked into themselves before becoming a therapist. I feel like people who should be therapists are people who don't want to be therapists. Like, they should feel compelled to do the work because they have to, because they know they could reach people, instead of being like, gosh, I just want to talk to people all day long and like learn juicy gossip. But you know, you have those types. So it can be incredibly instrumental or incredibly detrimental. But I love using it as, I'm gonna just throw this thought out. What do you think? Tell me. And then you always have to have that kind of, I always have to have this back thought of, am I looking for professional validation in the way that I think, like, oh, this person knows how normal people think, so I need her to tell me that the way I think is normal. I gave up on trying to be normal a long time ago, but my therapist knows that in me, and she'll be like, well, how do you feel about it? And why do you think you feel that way? And like, how do you think this relates to your life? And I'm like, gosh, darn it. Fine, I'll think about it in my unique way, because why would I try to think of it in another way that relates not at all to me or my experiences? But therapy doesn't have to be this heavy, like, overarching, looming thing. You're sick, you need help. It can be this just everyday tool of, well, it's nice to have someone else's ear, someone who's there for you specifically, isn't entangled in your life in too many ways, has an understanding of it, but is that objective third party. Oh gosh, that's the therapy of just going to therapy and having that as a resource. And I know we're incredibly privileged to have as many resources as we do. We need more. We need the whole thing to be, and you know, less stigmatized and much more widely available and more cost effective. But you know, there's people in countries that have never, they don't have a concept, a fundamental concept of therapy. And I hurt for those people, because that is in 2020. I think I didn't start therapy till 2021 seriously. And that is what kickstarted me, not just talking to my brain inside my head. It was this objective person who's not going to tell you the dang answer, no matter how much you want her to just tell you exactly what to think. Sometimes she gets you to think about it, and then your neural pathways grow to where you do that to yourself eventually, and then there's just no stopping the overthinking. But it's healthy. I think it's healthier, and I prefer it over choosing not to think and choosing safe brain.
Yeah,
I'd rather be anxious, clearly.
You're like, wait, don't let my anxiety hear me say that. But
this level, I can tolerate this level.
Yeah. Right. Because I think you do feel more connected with your journey and your process, because you're keyed in. You're not trying to numb yourself, distract yourself, or ignore what you're experiencing within, even if what you're experiencing within feels really uncomfortable and it makes your brain and your heart race a mile a minute. Of course, there's all different ways that these symptoms will manifest, but sometimes I think leaning into those to figure out, okay, self, like, what are you trying to communicate to me? And then holding space to hear the answers. You know, a lot of times we have the answers within us. We don't need to look outside of ourselves for the answers. But to your point, having a sounding board like a therapist who you see once a week, once a month, once every other week, the frequency doesn't necessarily matter if you're using it as a tool for talk therapy, because you're talking about giving your time 1 hour to another person But the rest of the work and the rest of your life is all on you. I mean, all the work that you're doing in therapy is happening outside of that therapy session. So they can tell you whatever they can tell you in 55 minutes or less, but what you do with it is up to you. And that's really going to impact how productive that time spent really was or not. And I always recommend people who...
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to give
the beginning of your journey.
There's
the delay is great.
Okay,
I love it.
No, you go.
Please remember what you were about to say. I just wanted to know the beginning of your therapy journey, because mine was so out of control in the beginning because you don't know how to manage emotions. The panic attack, mine was a specific medical thing that triggered that, and then that triggered everything else. And the world fell on top of me my junior year of college. And I remember going to class and just my body, I was not in control. Not that we're ever really in control of our bodies, but I felt like a spiral, and it would just hit at random times, what felt like random times. So once I got at least that under control, thanks to therapy, thanks to medication, thanks to just talking to friends and realizing I'm not alone in this, then I could go into the deeper stuff of what am I projecting here? What biases do I have that I'm putting on this situation that don't need to be here? So I just want to say, for people starting therapy, it was so messy at first. And I literally would just have breakdowns, panic attacks, not know what the heck was going on. And that wasn't something in therapy that I could just talk out. That wasn't something in therapy I could talk out for years afterwards. That was something that my body, I didn't know how to process the emotions or the feelings, and it was getting trapped and amplifying itself. So it's it can be a slow stage, but once you get the basics down and you kind of can flip your mindset of I feel bad. This is not a feeling that's going to last forever. I've done this before. I've lived. It feels like I'm going to die, but I'm going to live. And then you can be on the other side. But in the beginning, I was like, I'm going to die, and that's the end of everything. And I'm going to just, so it's not cut and dry. Everyone's experience is different, but I wondered if you were similar in what got you into therapy, and was it uncontrollable anxiety, panic attacks, or just the messy beginning part? Tell me.
Right. No. Yeah. And it's such a great question. And as you were asking it, I was thinking back, okay, what did get me into therapy? And there were 3 different distinct moments where I entered therapy. And I'm putting it in quotes for anyone only listening to audio, because it's not like I ever stepped out of therapy. I feel like once you start seeing a therapist, you're like a client for life, because you can always tap back into that resource. You now know that tool exists, and there isn't really a point where you turn it off. I mean, maybe you don't go for 6 months, a couple years, whatever, but once you go back, to me, it's kind of like that old friend where you pick up where you left off. It's not to say I had the same therapist in each of these 3 instances. The reason they stand out to me as 3 specific independent instances is actually because there are 3 different therapists, but they were ones that I connected with at different points in my life for different reasons. And I will share that momentarily, but I'm going to give the plug that I was trying to say earlier. If you are seeking out therapy, my advice and what has worked for me is interviewing several different therapists, figuring out what their specialty is, and going into those appointments as if you're hiring someone, because you're paying them to work for you and help you through your mental health, which translates into a lot of different areas of life: physical, emotional, sexual, spiritual health, and so on and so forth. So I don't take it lightly, and don't assume that every therapist is going to be able to help you achieve your goals in the same way. They're not all made the same. They haven't been educated in the same way. And that's the beauty of it too, because they can reach all different types of people, but it's a chance for you not to just Not to just walk into the first therapist's office you find and assume, okay, I'm good now. I'm going to get cured. I'm finally going to therapy. Like, it takes a little bit more intentionality and connection with yourself of following your intuition and seeing, is this a person I can trust? Is this someone I can connect with? Is this someone who's going to understand what I've been through? And is this someone who can help me get to where I see myself going? So asking yourself those questions and posing them in your mind when you're meeting different therapists will actually help you pinpoint who you want to work with and maybe who you could see yourself working with. So yeah, that's my plug on how to find a therapist. Now, once you find them, yes, it can be very messy when you're unloading because you did find someone who's a stranger who you've decided you can trust. The first time I went to therapy was in high school. And it was prompted after it was so I grew up religious, right? So I had gone on this Catholic retreat, went to confession, and the priest was like, hey, I think you should go to therapy. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So wasn't this like panic attack or anything that you've described, but it was kind of like some outside influence saying, hey, it sounds like you want to talk to someone. Maybe you should go talk to someone. And I spoke with my parents about it.
Which is funny because usually the next step is talk to God, right? I love that you were exposed to the idea of therapy so early. I love that. I feel like that's rare. I'm jaded, but I feel like that's rare. Continue, please.
Thanks. Yeah. And I've never looked at that as like any significant moment, except for the fact that what I had shared in confession, he felt was outside of his power. And that's how I took it. So instead of him saying, God can solve this for you, he's like, hey, maybe you should talk to someone. And at the time, it was very validating for my experience. And I shared already that I will be writing a book. So all of the details will be in the book. But until then, I'm going to keep some of them to myself. However, I will say when I went to
I like that.
Yeah. But when I went to that therapist in high school, I saw her twice. And by the second time, I was essentially cured. So it's not like it was a long-standing therapy appointment or anything. But basically what I had gone in for, right, what the priest had seen as like an area of opportunity she didn't see from her medical background or, therapeutic expertise as something that was serious enough to keep me in therapy. So I went in and I went out. And then I finished high school, went through college, and it wasn't until I had graduated college and the world felt like it was getting ripped out from underneath me that and it wasn't immediate either, because similar to that, right? So the priest in high school is the one who told me to go talk to someone. After college, I had several different jobs. I was working in retail, and this woman came in. I had been working in retail at least a year and a half with this specific company at that time. And she came in and just was, like every customer comes in, they tell me their business, they tell me their life story, what have you. She shared that she owned a psychotherapy practice and had a woman there who worked with women and helped them from a life coach perspective. And life coach and female mentorship, those were very comfortable phrases for me. That was a safe space. I felt like, okay, that's what I'm looking for. They were kind of these quote trigger words that guided me towards this light. And it wasn't like she was telling me, oh, hey, you need to go talk to someone. But she's like, I have someone to talk, or you can talk with if you want to. And so I wound up meeting with this life coach who is, a certified psychotherapist, and throughout her own journey has now become a licensed mental health counselor, which is amazing just to even see her own growth and development over the years. But she was someone who I went in to therapy at that time taking everything into question, like what I had learned growing up, exactly what you just described. It's like everything I thought was true, I realized wasn't. And what do I do with that now? And how do I stay present and still move forward and figure it out? And so we did a lot of work together just on mindfulness and staying present and figuring out what resonates with me, what is my truth, et cetera, et cetera. And I was very happy going through life at that time, slow and steady. And it's interesting that you were 23 during the pandemic when this pivotal change happened for you, because I was 23 when a huge change in life happened for me. And I think I started seeing her when I was maybe 25, 24, 25, somewhere in there. So there's something about your 20s that you get this chance to kind of create life on your own terms, and you get to decide what that looks like. And for me, it was realizing everything I thought life would be and where I thought I would have been at that point wasn't true and clearly wasn't going to happen. So what do I want, the next 25 years to look like? And when you turn a quarter of a century old, it feels really old, but after you get through it, you're like, okay, that wasn't so bad. And then fast forward to a year and a half ago or so is when I met my third therapist. And he told me that many times people come into therapy because of some relationship in their life. It could be external, like a spouse, a friend, a parent, a child. It could be, the place you work, the environment you work in, the people you work with, or it could be your relationship with yourself. But either way, he said that many times people come in because there's something out of, flow. I mean, he didn't use the word flow. I'm using that, but like there's something not right happening in your life and it kind of drives you into therapy. And since he pointed that out, I've kind of sat with it a bit and realized, okay, yeah, when my relationships aren't going the way I expect them to or want them to, I kind of hit this panic button. And for me, the tool I use to help me through that panic is therapy. It's talking with someone who's removed from my life, who has expertise and guidance, and is someone I trust to hold space for me and listen to what it is I have to share. And offloading a lot of the thoughts in my head is helpful, period, full stop. But it's also helpful to see my progress, to check in with them and be like, hey, this is what we spoke about. This is what I've done. This is where I'm at. It's almost like when you're running bases in baseball and you have your first base coach and your third base coach there, you keep an eye on them, but you're also watching the rest of the game and you just make sure, okay, I'm on track. I'm doing the right thing. And it just helps me continue moving forward. I won't say I necessarily need to go to therapy for the rest of my life, but I kind of enjoy it. It's like going to the gym or drinking water or getting 9 hours of sleep at night. Like it is part of the things that keep me happy and healthy and moving forward. And Devon, I know that was so long-winded. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that answer.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree. I don't think it's long-winded. I was just captivated by the process because even though we didn't start in the same messy, it was a similar messy, and that's what messy looked like for you, and that the mess made so much noise in your life that you actually took the advice of a priest in high school, because high schoolers famously not great at taking advice, and I can say that as a former high schooler. The frontal lobe, which houses the reasoning, is not solidified till I think 26, and
or 28.
Boy, did it feel like
yeah.
that. Yeah, we're barely solidified, and we're still learning a lot. But
right.
High schoolers not great with feedback generally. So I'm glad that you took the dive in high school. And then there have been multiple iterations since. I feel like I hear that too. There are versions of therapy that you need in certain years with certain therapists, maybe. But there's always, I love the background of, okay, but I'm going to continue investing in myself and the way I think and pushing that, because that is how we move anywhere in life, is how do I optimize this for myself, for the betterment of myself? Like we can say jobs are great for, increasing capital and opportunities and networking. But if you are not able to sit with yourself at night and you just pour yourself into work or something else, there's room for improvement there. There's a chance for you to understand yourself better than you ever have. And just staying in therapy, even if the results differ per person, per experience, per trauma, I love seeing that, because I have that with a couple friends now, and we all have stories of our first therapist, our second therapist, the ones we're seeing now, when we choose not to see the therapist when we're good, which you can still see a therapist, but they still cost money. So sometimes you skip a week because I'm happy to be alive this week. And then other weeks you have something specific to bring up. I will say I hate journaling. Routine is hard for ADHD people and probably a lot of other people. But my therapist uses NeuroFlow, an app now. We just started using it, and you can journal on your off, like any day, every day, all day. And she can see it and read it, but I don't have to wait till I'm in her presence on a call for therapy specifically to just get things out of my brain. Because a lot of the times it is just that. And then we can talk about it in our next session, but just getting it out of your head, immensely helpful. But I love hearing people's trajectories of therapy. Gosh, you just learn so much about a person. And, as an aside for your book, you should definitely, like, in a tagline somewhere, find out what high school Katrina told a priest that made him say, oof, you gotta go to therapy, girl.
Right. Oh yeah. It'll be in there. So that's a teaser for you.
I love that.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, Devon. Thank you. And as we, wrap up, I mean, it's been so great having you on the show already. And I just feel like there's so much more to keep talking about because we've barely grazed the surface, on who you are and how you've gotten here. But before we hopped on, you mentioned just including some like grounding techniques or daily practices. So we've spoken about therapy. Is there anything else that you've found to be really helpful that maybe the audience would also love to hear about? And if not, it doesn't matter. It's working for you. So I would still love to hear about it.
I like the idea of simple things that don't have to mean a whole lot, but mean something to you in that one little moment. So I've gotten really into small hand lotions. They come in about 1 million, they're not flavors, scents. And they're just, I love the little ones. I don't know why. I love small, cute things. Maybe it's like a tactile thing. I don't know. But like I got a multi-pack from Costco of this goat lotion, and it came in so many different scents. And sometimes if I'm just having a bad brain, if I'm having a less than ideal situation happen in the day, I can just do a little lotion in my hands, like smell it, just rub it, like get some senses in there, your sight, your smell, your touch. Don't eat it, but you can eat something for a similar thing. And just those little moments of, I can control this. I can give myself something that smells good. That's going to kick some oxytocin, I think. I don't think it's dopamine. I think it's oxytocin in my brain. Give me a little up. Same thing as like going for a quick jog. The endorphins, you're not going to want to. Maybe you do. Good for you. I don't want to. But then if you do, endorphins, there's so many things that like are kind of stupid simple because we are just walking meat bags. I know that is the worst way to put that, but we are just a bunch of chemicals firing, and we can unfortunately think about it better than any other mammal. So just the little things that can bring you instantaneous joy, I think they make such a huge difference throughout the day. In such a world where we have limited control of certain things, but we are always bombarded. That's pretty much outside of our control unless we, completely detach ourselves. So like little lotions, big into the lotions right now. So tangerines, they smell amazing when you open them, but just little things that you can do for yourself in a moment to like snap yourself into, I'm here, I'm alive, I can control this. And it's so little and it feels insignificant, but then you just, you have a little emergency thing in your arsenal to bring you back to present. So I think they're underrated. Just at little things you can do throughout the day. I'm sure you have your version of it is grounding, but it's also just bringing yourself back into reality.
And you're tapping into your senses, tactile, like you said, but also, olfactory, like the nose.
Oh, wow.
I know. Okay, look at me remembering things. My friend bought me just the best smelling lotion, and I've been doing that without even putting words to it. So the fact that you've just described this new tool for my toolkit, it's something I can remember to tap into now. My grounding practices are typically like be where your feet are. So I'm like, okay, my feet are on the ground. I'm in this room, and I start going through those things that are very tactical, of course. But lotions, like scents don't bother me. I actually enjoy them. So that would work for me. I know some people are sensitive to scents. So obviously, if that's you, please don't take this advice. But find something that does work for you. And I think if we engage different senses, you know, what do we see? What do we hear? Those things can really go a long way in helping us stay present and not getting so caught up in everything that's going on around us. I love zooming out. So anything that helps me do that is definitely welcome here. Thank you, Devon, for sharing what works for you and sharing a bit about your journey of becoming. It's been amazing having you on the show.
I always enjoy talking to you, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Until next time.
You are my most important listener, and I can't thank you enough for spending your time with me. If this content resonates with you, then hit subscribe. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube by following @ConnectorQueen. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again on the next episode of Becoming You.